Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 630.
WMAL.
7:37 on the Morning Majority, and we've got one of our favorites here, Representative Steve King. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks for having me on.
Good. How are you feeling about the debt talks? You got any inside info for us on what the president might say? Is he going to lecture us a little bit more?
Well, I wish I knew. He seems to be sliding around the place without having a lot to hang on to. And I'll just say, when I look at the numbers that are being proposed in the area of $1.7 trillion in cuts over 10 years, that's just not enough. That's working in the loose change category of what we need to do if we're going to fix this big problem. And what I don't know is, are we going to reach that point where maybe perhaps Speaker Boehner will then walk out of the talks like President Reagan did out of Reykjavik, or are we going to end up with some deal that's mush that kicks the can down the road and does a partial fix for a short period of time and drains the pressure off? I want to get it done now.
Well, now there are two camps. One that says if we get to August 2nd and we haven't passed some kind of deal, even if it's not a good one, then everything falls apart. There's another camp that says, no, we can go on, we won't default, we can prioritize. Which camp are you in? I think you've got maybe some legislation that addresses this.
I am. I'm in the second camp. I introduced legislation along with Michelle Bachmann and Louis Gohmert, and it's accumulating co-sponsors now at a pretty decent rate. That it does this. It requires that our military be paid first, on time, every time, in every circumstance, whether it's a funding gap from a CR or hitting the debt ceiling. Second priority is we take care of the full faith and credit of the United States government by servicing our debt. That takes about, together, $31 billion a month out of about a $200 billion a month revenue stream that we have. 15.2% of the cash coming in the door will make sure that our credit is good and our troops get paid. I do not believe the world comes apart if we do that.
How long, though? How long can you do that for? I mean, I know there was a study out yesterday, Bipartisan Policy Center, that said, yeah, you can move things around, but probably only for a couple of weeks, and then you're going to have to essentially either cut federal pay, Pell Grants, law enforcement, FBI may have to shut down. I mean, how long can you do that without raising the debt ceiling?
Well, the part that I've proposed, I mean, just staying within the two categories of military pay and servicing our debt, we can do that in perpetuity. So we have another 85% of our budget that we can apply to the other things that you mentioned and many others. But what it comes down to is that, nobody really knows what happens, the sequence of events, if we get to a debt ceiling. But the president has tremendous control over what gets spent in what order. So I more fear the president using it as a political lever. And right now, scaring the seniors on Social Security, scaring the retired military on military pensions. If we don't give the president priorities by which he must pay, then he has great leverage to demand a debt ceiling increase without a lot of concessions, and that's what I'm concerned about.
All right, what's good enough for you? What's good enough for you to say, okay, we'll raise the debt ceiling. I need this in exchange. What do you want? What does Steve King want?
Well, I've said since January that put the repeal of Obamacare on there, and I'm ready to go. And, of course, I'm not naive enough to think that that's the number one item on the table in the White House. But I'd say this, pass the Promises Act so we guarantee the military are not used as a pawn in a political leverage game, and guarantee our full faith and credit, which has been driven very well by Tom McClintock and Pat Toomey. And let's send the constitutional amendment to the states for ratification, and then do some serious cuts. If we get that far, we've accomplished a lot, and had we seen a constitutional amendment to balance the budget ratified in 95, where it fell one vote short in the United States Senate, we would not be having this conversation today. Right. So I think that amendment's really important.
I like that amendment, too. We talked about it on the show this morning, and a lot of people have concerns about it. They say, well, first of all, there are times when you actually need deficits, and if you do this, then it actually gives the Democrats kind of what they need, because they'll say, look, by law, we're going to have to raise taxes in order to have a balanced budget. What do you think about that?
Well, the constitutional amendment that we passed out of the Judiciary Committee caps spending at 18% of GDP. So that helps us a lot, as far as tax increases are concerned, and it requires a two-thirds majority to increase taxes or to go above the 18% of GDP. I think those are real good assurances that are built into that constitutional amendment. I think it's a prudent thing to do. And again, if we had that in place right now, we wouldn't have this problem, and we're a great big grease if we don't do something.
Right. What about in times when you need deficits for wars or for something else, natural disasters or something that could happen where you actually where you need a deficit?
Well, we have exceptions for war, and also the natural disaster side of this, a two-thirds majority in the House can take care of that. House and Senate can take care of that. And we've had those situations. The Katrina vote, for example, blew through the House with only 11 dissenters out of 435. So I think you can see that happen under those circumstances.
Did you vote for Paul Ryan's budget?
Yes, I did. I voted for the RSC budget first, which balanced in less than 9 years, and then voted for Paul Ryan's budget. It was the best thing out there, and I'm glad you raised the subject. There's some things I'd like to fix on it.
All right, I'm wondering about that because, from what I remember, the Paul Ryan budget doesn't actually balance the budget for several years, decades down the road.
26 years.
Okay,
actually.
so doesn't that essentially mean that you're going to have to raise the debt ceiling if you're going to go through with Paul Ryan's budget? I mean, don't we infer that you'd have to raise the debt ceiling if you would put Paul Ryan's budget in place?
That's right. I agree, and I accept your point, and we need to be more aggressive than we are. I look at my three grown sons that are in their early 30s, and they maybe have worked in 1 or 2 years with a balanced budget. Under the budget that we passed out of the House, they would be looking at retirement and Medicare eligibility by the time they saw a federal budget that was balanced. That's way too long. Mm-hmm. We've got to get to it faster, and I think Paul Ryan would agree with that too.
Well, and let's take it to Iowa for a moment. You'll be facing some competition in your re-election campaign from Democrat Christie Vilsack, and it sounds like one Chris Christie is coming to fundraise for you in July. Where will you be showing him around? Who will he be talking to?
Well, it's pretty interesting. We have a Christie Vilsack, the wife of the Secretary of Agriculture, has now decided at this period of her career to enter into politics, and that would be a new entry for her. And then the Chris Christie, who I will show him cornfields, Republicans, activists. I'm looking forward to showcasing Iowa to a dynamic governor, and I very much appreciate his willingness to do this. Of all the things that he could be volunteering to do, I'm extremely flattered that he would think enough of the things at stake to come to Iowa to do a fundraising event for me.
What kind of draw do you think he might be with Iowa Republicans?
I think he'll be as good a draw as any presidential candidate right now, and that's been about as far as I can go with that. But I like him a lot. He's got an instantaneous response to sometimes difficult questions, and we need decisive, bold leadership. He is a good example of that, and he's leading from a state. And he says, he's a person that down the line ways all of America, I think, is going to be looking at.
All right, Congressman King, it's always great to have you on the show. I appreciate it.
Always my privilege. Thank you.
Steve King from Iowa here on the Morning Majority.